The United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, has recently supported a study informed by more than 2,000 lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex or LGBTI people throughout Vietnam. The research shows that 30% was denied of job application for being LGBTI people and 48% heard negative comments from colleagues. To tackle discrimination against those people in business, UNDP Vietnam and the Economist Intelligence Unit jointly organized an executive dialogue in Hanoi on January the 17th to foster LGBTI inclusion. Participants pointed out that LGBTI diversity and inclusion is increasingly becoming a business priority. 87% of Fortune 500 companies now have non-discrimination policies based on sexual orientation. Though companies in Vietnam and other Asian countries may lag behind their Western counterparts, many are making important steps in the right direction.
Mekong Capital cũng như các công ty mà bên mình đầu tư vào, mình luôn tư vấn là phải tạo môi trường làm việc làm sao mà cái người lao động của mình họ có thể phát huy được tối đa những cái khả năng mà họ có thể đóng góp cho công ty, và cái đó là cái lợi nhất cho công ty. Và để họ có thể làm được điều vậy thì họ phải có một cái môi trường làm việc happy, họ cảm thấy là thoải mái, an toàn và được tôn trọng ở đó. Thì bên mình chỉ tập trung vào promoting, tức là nâng cao những cái giá trị như vậy, tôn trọng lẫn nhau, yêu thương lẫn nhau, tạo cái môi trường làm việc tốt nhất cho mọi người. Thì tự động khi mà mọi người làm trong cái môi trường đó thì họ sẽ tự động là sẽ yêu thương nhau và tôn trọng lẫn nhau. Cho dù bạn có là LGBT hay là người khuyết tật hay là người bất kỳ là người gì thì họ vẫn là những người như vậy.
Participants at the dialogue identified key priority areas for action, advocacy and collaboration for the private sector, civil society and government to strengthen LGBTI inclusion in Vietnam. They suggested to work with the trade unions and to recognize the champion businesses in this area. All startups need to integrate LGBTI inclusion in early stage of their development, and civil society continues playing an important role in connecting LGBTI people to the business community and providing training and mobilizing public support. Hello and welcome to Sharing Vietnam. The protection of LGBTI people's rights has been receiving more and more attention here in Vietnam. In our program today, we will get to know more about the development of inclusive workplaces for LGBTI people here. Our guest today is Mrs. Louise Chamberlain, Country Director of the United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, in Vietnam. So hello, Mrs. Chamberlain. Thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, could you give us some information on the protection of LGBTI people's rights in Vietnam from a legal perspective?
I think starting with the broader legal framework is, of course, the important move in the 2013 amended constitution to ensure that there is no grounds for discrimination. That's a very important starting point for developing subsequently a legal framework on anti-discrimination. Now, as of today, we haven't yet seen a law that prevents discrimination. That's quite a bit of a challenge, because that means that anyone who is subjected to discrimination on sexual ground or gender identity or any other ground, they actually are unable to seek legal remedy. So that's quite a weak, effective legal protection as of today. But we have seen some encouraging signs. Importantly, also the recent family and marriage law and other legal framework that now makes it you are actually able to select your gender identity when you register in public systems. That's quite an important step forward. And marriage is no longer strictly defined as a union between man and woman, and I think that was quite an important progress as well. This is a work in progress, but we really look forward to seeing a law that effectively puts an end to discrimination.
Today, UNDP Vietnam and the Economist Intelligence Unit co-organized a dialogue on developing inclusive workplaces for LGBTI people. So, could you talk a little bit about the benefits of LGBTI diversity and inclusion in businesses?
For any workplace, it's very important to have diverse perspectives. In the modern world where innovation is so important for companies and other organizations to prosper and grow, it's critical that we have different perspectives and different ideas, and that we harness those as widely as possible. Any organization is only as strong as its employees. So LGBTI people have different perspectives and different ideas, and that can enrich the work culture. I think that the perspective of diversity is quite important.
Mrs. Chamberlain, what do you think of the current situation of LGBTI people's business inclusion in Vietnam, including both foreign and domestic companies?
So what we have learned from the companies that have been part of the dialogue today, and that we've also interacted with as part of research, is that many, particularly starting from the point of view of the employees, many people who are either applying for work or are working in organizations, if they are LGBTI, they face a lot of challenges. There are a lot of challenges in recruitment practices, but also people feel inhibited to be their true selves in the workplace. That said, there are a number of organizations that have taken proactive measures to really foster an inclusive culture, a culture where people feel safe to express their true identity, and where companies also actively seek to hire people of all backgrounds, including people with an LGBTI profile, because they understand that the value of different identities can bring to their organization. So we've seen a number of good examples of companies that have, let's say, support groups for LGBTI, or who have equality practice and targets, even target setting for the inclusiveness in recruitment and hiring practices.
In 2013, an LGBTI community known as Việt Pride Hanoi launched the Equal Office campaign with the aim of providing a platform for corporations to openly support the LGBTI movement in Vietnam. The campaign includes various actions such as providing posters with basic explanation of sexual orientation and gender identity, LGBTI film screenings at lunchtime for employees, magnetic pins and badges with messages of LGBTI equality, convenient to pin in office pantries, office doors, or individual cubicles. In 2015, to expand their work, Việt Pride Hanoi joined hands with the Center for Social Initiatives Promotion to kickstart Work with Pride, an ongoing campaign focused on assisting corporations in cultivating LGBTI-friendly workplace on multiple levels.
Trong cái khuôn khổ của chương trình công sở bình đẳng thì chúng tôi rất là mong muốn là tạo ra một cái nơi tạm gọi là một cái diễn đàn để mọi người có thể đối thoại về những cái vấn đề về công sở bình đẳng đối với những người LGBT. Và thứ nhất là chúng tôi tạo ra cái diễn đàn đấy. Cái thứ hai là chúng tôi có hỗ trợ các doanh nghiệp trong việc họ triển khai những cái hoạt động để họ có thể là làm cho cái công sở của họ trở nên bình đẳng hơn. Ví dụ như họ có thể là xem xét lại những cái chính sách về tuyển dụng, chính sách về đãi ngộ để làm sao cho nó bao gồm cả những người LGBT, và người LGBT có cảm thấy là mình được làm việc trong một môi trường cởi mở và được tôn trọng. Cái điểm thứ ba nữa là chúng tôi cũng cố gắng hợp tác với lại các cơ quan lập pháp để có thể tạo ra cái khuôn khổ pháp lý để mọi người để quyền lợi của người LGBT được đảm bảo.
The initiative already has the support of global names including Google, PwC, KPMG, and Baker & McKenzie, as well as smaller local businesses. It also receives assistance from the diplomatic missions of some countries and global organizations, such as the United States Embassy, the Dutch Embassy, and the United Nations Development Program in Vietnam. Mrs. Chamberlain, what are some lessons that companies in Vietnam have learned from creating inclusive workplaces for women, minorities, disabled people, and other marginalized groups? And how can these lessons be extended to LGBTI people?
One clear experience that I hear about is the importance of taking affirmative action and really making sure to. We talk about inclusive practices and avoiding discrimination, but it may also be important to overcome prejudice, to actually more actively make sure to hire people of different backgrounds. It's quite possible to have an equal. Sometimes we hear companies say that we cannot find qualified women, but frankly, I don't believe this to be true. It's a matter of how you're looking and whether you're ready to promote people who may not fit the usual stereotype of what you expect. Just look for qualified people, and they are out there.
Could you give us some major recommendations in key priority areas to further promote inclusive workplaces for LGBTI people here in Vietnam?
So you asked earlier about the legal framework. I think that is a starting point. It will be very important that LGBTI have the opportunity to seek legal redress. So, and a law that actively prohibits discrimination is quite important. And then that companies foster more inclusive environment, that they foster policies that seek to recruit more diverse talent, and that they set targets and norms within their company, both for the culture but also how the company should operate. And I think government has a very important role to play in public procurement, to also can choose to work with companies who have better practices than others, not just in the area of LGBTI and human rights, but also perhaps on greener production policies and so on. So where there is a procurement to be done, these things can be made into criteria that we have the inclusive policies for hiring talent.
And finally, how will UNDP Vietnam work with partners to further strengthen LGBTI people's inclusion in Vietnamese businesses?
Within a wider context of the UN agencies here in Vietnam, working to encourage corporate social responsibility and involving the private sector, the business sector, in achieving development goals in different ways. I think one thing we really want to do is to encourage companies to adopt these new ways of thinking, the new cultures, to exchange practices with each other, and perhaps some of these inclusive criteria can also become success factors more in the competitive area. So to bring out what we heard today was also about the value proposition or the business value of actually expanding diversity in your corporation. That's one key issue, but also to encourage companies therefore to set gender equality targets and to follow up on them very closely, to conduct regular reviews, to create support groups for people of LGBTI background and perhaps other groups, to build a culture of openness and of respect and diversity and integrity. I think our role is particularly to prepare or enable space for dialogue. These are dialogues that have to take place among Vietnamese companies and organizations. We will definitely share best practices and good practices from other countries and environments when it comes to anti-discriminatory practices and legislation. But also to perhaps offer the service and opportunity for these companies to adopt these practices, so we can help disseminate and compare and exchange knowledge on these things.
Well, Mrs. Chamberlain, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some very valuable information.
Thank you. I do too. Thank you.
Well, that's all for our Sharing Vietnam today. Hopefully, the rise of LGBTI people in Vietnam will be further promoted, especially in workplaces, to fully tap their potential. Thank you so much for watching and see you again next time.